Welcome to Startup Health Now, the podcast where we celebrate health's most innovative entrepreneurs and the health moonshots they're working to achieve. I'm Nicole Clark, Startup Health Senior Writer. It's March, and I'm excited to be kicking off Women's History Month and the upcoming celebration of International Women's Day with this next episode. We're covering a women's health topic that is near and dear to my heart, menopause. I know, it's not a health topic normally described as endearing, which is precisely the point. Today, I'm going to introduce you to an entrepreneur who is changing the narrative surrounding this inevitable phase of a woman's life. Her name is Jill Angelo, and she's the founder and CEO of Gennev. Gennev is a Seattle-based startup that runs a telemedicine service for women experiencing menopause. Angelo sat down with Hellopause's producer Lisa Kaselak and Startup Health's former portfolio director, Polina Hanin, for a conversation at the 2020 Startup Health Festival. Their chat digs into why this second half of a woman's life should be treated less like Pandora's box and more like a catalyst for coming into one's own. It's the kind of dialogue that's widening the aperture for women's health. So sit back, enjoy, and if you want to join the discussion, by all means, hit us up on Twitter at Startup Health.
I am super excited to be having this conversation, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to treat this as a personal session for me where I'm going to ask you all the questions about my future. So, I am in my 30s, and I feel like ever since I was a wee little girl, I've been finding out about my own health and the care that I receive in real time. So everything that has happened to me, this is what you're experiencing now, this is the stage that you're in now, or it's a bunch of timeline-specific boogeyman type of things of you need to have kids by X amount of time, and at some point in time you'll have menopause, and that is it. So why is that?
You know, I think personally part of this mystery of women's health is that there's no one size fits all. We keep trying to create roadmaps, around first you do this and then that and so forth. So it's part there's no one size fits all. We're complex because our hormonal nature. But I think also secondly, it's just not studied, and we don't talk about it. There's so much shame associated with so many parts of women's health, and menopause, which is what I focus on with Gennev, is probably one of the biggest mysteries, and the first thing we do is just try to inform women.
So tell us a little bit about how you came to found Gennev.
So my background's technology. I spent about 20 years in tech, a big chunk of that at Microsoft. I love tech, but I'm a marketing person. And I had a great career and then always wanted more meaning in my work. And I've always had a passion around women and helping them with their health and their development and their confidence. And then I met my co-founder, Jackie Brandwin, who helped build Neutrogena. She's older. She's not wasn't interested in building a startup, but she really had the vision around menopause being a place in women's health that little to no work was being done. And so we started Gennev, and here we are.
And here we are. Lisa, I saw you nodding vigorously earlier when we were talking about the challenges within women's health. Did you have a similar experience that I did, or how did you come to find Gennev and be a part of Hellopause?
Yeah, no, exactly the experience that you had. It turns out that the ability to give life is a really complex mechanism, and it has all kinds of implications that start in teenhood with puberty, and then the end of that fertility cycle with menopause. But just as you said, they don't really tell you about any of it until you're actually going through it, and that's what happened to me. I was pretty blindsided by a lot of symptoms that started occurring to me in my early 40s. I'm 50 now, and I had no idea that any of it was associated with perimenopause, and I started to really dig under the hood, and once I scratched the surface, there's really a lot of information. It's a fire hose even, but it's contradictory and confusing, and you don't really know how to wade through it. And I found Gennev by chance, really, as I was trying to figure out where to find treatment for myself.
So what were some of the responses that you would get? Who did you even turn to when you were experiencing these symptoms?
I had already seen 2 or 3 gynecologists, none of whom had mentioned to me that any of my symptoms were associated with perimenopause.
Wow.
And then I started to go to one of the gynecologists just started to give me B12 shots. And I started noticing a lot of my girlfriends in the waiting room at the same time. And I thought, okay, there's something more going on here. And I couldn't get an appointment. I looked up menopause specialist, and there was nobody listed. And I live in a major metropolitan area in Austin, Texas. So more digging, and I found the North American Menopause Society. And the 2 physicians that they had listed had waiting lists of over 6 months. And I couldn't wait that long.
Yeah.
And that's how I found Gennev. And I met Jill because I reached out to her cold on LinkedIn, and thank goodness she reached back. So that's how I became a patient of Gennev. And for those women who live in rural areas or in areas where they can't get in to see a physician, it's a godsend, truly, to be able to pick up your phone or your computer and call Gennev for the cost of a copay and get a specialist.
So how does, Jill, if you could tell us a little bit more about how this would work. Is it as simple as picking up your phone and calling, and that's all there is to it, and get an answer?
Yeah, you can come to Gennev.com, and you can book an appointment right there in our scheduling system. Last year when I was on stage here, we were in 1 state with telemedicine practitioners. We're now in 41, so even 1 state more. We went up a state since I last gave you the number. So it's great, and it's video chat, it's one-on-one, it's super confidential. More and more, we're even prescribing pharmacy products or prescription products for women that need additional help that a face-to-face conversation can accommodate, where lab work isn't done or a physical examination.
So let's address the elephant in the room around one particular item that gets thrown around the notion of menopause, and it's turned into a bit of a joke, is hot flashes. Anytime anyone gets warm or for any reason, like, oh, you're having hot flashes. And so that certainly stigmatizes the entire experience and doesn't enable us to talk about really any of it. What are some of the other reasons why you think that stigma truly exists, and some of the blocks that we may experience of talking about menopause?
You know, I think, and Lisa definitely add on to this, number one, menopause, the whole hormonal, like, induced, kind of, whether it's anxiety or rage or hot flashes, none of that's, like, pleasant.
Yeah.
But also, it's been associated with age and aging, and we're a society where it's not cool to say I'm in menopause or I'm having a hot flash and I'm aging. And so I think that's part of, the stigma around it. Women suffer in silence. Every woman goes through menopause. 1 in 3 have a pretty tough go of it. And so it's not, even in the workplace, women are not going to declare, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping, so I can't really concentrate during the day. Can I have some flexibility on when I would come in? Who's going to admit to not being at the top of their game at work? So there's a lot of challenges around that destigmatization that we've got to work through.
But also there's a really big payout. I mean, the other big time when, women can talk about what's happening with their bodies is during pregnancy and giving birth. And there's a pretty big payoff at the end of that, And we don't yet know, or we haven't advertised well, what the payoff is at the end of, perimenopause. And that's one of the things that we're really exploring is what is the power of women post 40 in our society, and so that's a really exciting thing to look at and explore.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been actually so impressed by with Hellopause is that it's women sitting around in a room and really talking about it, and it's public. You can check out their web series on YouTube, and it's just really honest discussions that are trying to break down through some of those walls, and I think I would encourage everyone not only to just check out the series, but to start having conversations about what can happen in the future. And with those conversations, I think we need some allies. So, Jill, you started to mention the workplace and flex time being something that employers can consider. What are some of the other ways in which all of us could be allies to women during this time?
We recently published the 2019 Menopause Zeitgeist. So if you go to Gennev.com and you search for the Menopause Zeitgeist, it's a report of over 6,000 women who have taken our menopause assessment on our site. And based on that, we've learned a lot from them. And one finding that came out of that was around this notion of support. Over 94% of all women in that survey said, we need to start supporting women more so in so many facets of life, whether that's from your doctor, with your girlfriends, in the workplace, with your partners. 1 in 5 women said, my partner tries to support me, but he or she just doesn't quite know what I'm going through. And so I think a lot of it, whether it's in the workplace or within families or relationships, it's education. The majority of women who come to Gennev say, just tell me I'm not going crazy. Or, please let's normalize it. And we do. Conversation will help drive some of that, but education, first and foremost, is what will really help.
Lisa, how did it feel to have some of those questions answered, that you're not, quote unquote, crazy?
Oh man, it was everything, because women are really good at criticizing themselves and kind of turning the lens inward. I was shocked actually to find out that there were thousands and thousands of other women that were having the exact same conversation that I was having, but they were having it behind closed doors. And they talk about it a lot amongst themselves, and then sort of when you get into that little club, then you find out about all those conversations. But I thought this is really important for us to speak about in a wider audience, which is actually why we're going to South by Southwest in March, to bring it to the conversation out in the open. And when we see women's faces talking about this, it really normalizes it.
So one of the things that I've also been so fascinated by is how the power of your message is really to embrace this entire journey. That it's not a death sentence, it's not a pre-menopause and post-menopause, like it's not this black and white thing or a colorful gray thing, which I find to be so liberating. How are you getting that message across it, and how have you been able to share it with people, and what has the reaction been?
We often say menopause is the kickoff to the second half of life. We have a whole nother second half. And, our vision is to be the go-to for women's health in the second half of life, ... starting with menopause, because that is the kickoff. It prepares us. And, you see, predominantly the number of women-owned startups or small businesses in the U.S. are owned by women 50 plus. Women come into their own confidence. They maybe are more independent, financially independent. And in that Zeitgeist survey, 76% of women said, I'm happier today than I was 10 years ago, and I've got a more positive outlook on life. So there's a lot to offer. And so we just want to really try to remind women and help them through this part that might not be as great.
Yeah, I really felt like there's I think when those weights come off, that's when you really understand how much weight there is in our culture and pressure put on women to perform, to be mothers, to nurture others, to look good, to be thin, to do all of these things. And when you go through menopause and you hit 50, all of those weights come off, and suddenly you just feel free to be true to your own nature, and that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I think that is an amazing note to end on, because honestly, Jill, because of you and Lisa and your story, it has made this entire journey, for me at least, a lot less scary looking forward into the future. And to be honest, it has given me an appreciation of women who are in the generation above me, about what they may be going through that I had no idea about, because they were doing it behind closed doors. And so I truly appreciate you sharing this story with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Startup Health invests in entrepreneurs like Jill, who are committed to achieving health moonshots. Like the International Women's Day maxim, we believe an equal world is an enabled world, which is why our growing army of health transformers is global. It includes more than 315 companies from 25 countries. To read more about the inspiring women and men in startup health, go to startuphealth.com and click on content. Next week, we're continuing our celebration of Women's History Month and International Women's Day. We'll be back with an episode featuring Esther Dyson, a Swiss-born American journalist and businesswoman. She's a renowned investor and commentator in the health tech startup space, and a startup health investor, advisor, and friend. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in to Startup Health Now. See you next time.